So welcome to What's Graywater. My name is Justin Burks. I'm with the Santa Clara Valley Water District. The quick answer is Graywater is a sustainable way to reuse water. There's a wide variety of ways that you can do that, and we'll learn about that today. And real quick, before I get going, I am a loud talker. Am I too loud for anyone right now? All right, fantastic, thank you. So again, my name is Justin Burks. I'm with the Santa Clara Valley Water District. As a water conservation specialist, I manage our Graywater rebate program. My contact information is up here. We also have a conservation hotline where you can ask general questions. My availability is sometimes a little limited, so it's always, you can always get a hold of someone at this number and at this email address. But if you have any very detailed or Graywater specific questions, my contact information is up there as well. I'm also privileged to be joined by Christina Bertea. She is with Graywater Action, which is one of the leading Graywater nonprofits in the state of California. And actually it was the group that helped make Graywater more accessible to the public in California back in 2009. It had been legal before that point, but there was a large shift in the regulatory requirements in 2009 that just made it more accessible going forward, and you'll learn about how that is today throughout our 2-hour workshop. Before I get going, I also wanted to thank the City of Palo Alto Utilities, Kevin Carley and his team, as well as BAWSCA for helping to coordinate this workshop. And just as a reminder, the bathrooms are through that door on my right, and there's a kitchen area in the back if you need any water. Before I give you the overview, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Santa Clara Valley Water District. We are a water wholesaler, meaning we don't provide you your water bill, but we make sure there's enough water in Santa Clara County so that the 13 water providers can deliver it directly to your home. We maintain infrastructure throughout the county, whether that's pipelines, reservoirs, restoration projects, or even the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center, which produces 8 million gallons of water per day. I live in a town of about 90,000 people, and we use about 8 million gallons per day in that town. So that is quite a large amount of water that plant is producing. All of our infrastructure is serves to meet 3 missions of the Santa Clara Valley Water District, which is providing a safe, clean, reliable water supply, flood protection, and also environmental stewardship to the residents and constituents of Santa Clara County. And in addition to the 13 local water providers, we have nearly 5,000 direct well owners in Santa Clara County. So anyone that gets their water from a local water provider or has their own well can benefit from any of our water conservation programs or services that we offer to the community. So without further ado, let's get started with a little quick summary. What is Graywater? You'll notice there are 2 ways to spell Graywater. I spell it with an A. You'll find a lot of regulations and government bodies spell Graywater with an A, whereas Christina, as well as most nonprofits and installers, will spell Graywater with an E. So when you're doing your own online research, just be aware of that distinction. I do my best to tag any of my references with both spellings so that it shows up regardless of how you go about your own research and projects going forward. We'll also talk about ways to use Graywater, best practices, detergents and soaps, which is a common question and concern people have. What's a mulch basin? You'll hear that a lot today, and you'll know the answer by the time you leave. And then I'll end the first of my sections about simpler Graywater systems. And then I'll yield the floor to Christina, who will talk about branch drain, which is a type of gravity-powered Graywater system, and also more complicated systems that have pumps and filters and other methods that have a wider applications that can benefit your home. And then we'll have a little scenario where we'll try to coalesce all that information that had been thrown at you over that period of time. We'll have a very short, maybe a 5-minute break at that point so that you can kind of digest the first half of of the workshop. When we come back, I'll cover why laundry to landscape. What is laundry to landscape? You'll find out, don't worry. But I'll also go into a detailed overview about what that entails. Effectively, it's a clothes washer Graywater system with some specifications that you'll learn. And then the Santa Clara Valley Water District offers a $200 to $400 rebate. Most of the county is a $200 rebate for installing the system. So stay tuned for that information if you're a Santa Clara County resident. And then Christina will be back to talk about the big picture. There's other benefits to Graywater beyond a financial incentive. And then we'll have a fun closing activity where you'll get your hands on some common Graywater plumbing parts and plumbing fixtures so you can be more familiar with what they're called, and so you're better suited and equipped when you go to your local plumbing, irrigation, or nursery store to actually describe what you're seeking. And then we'll have a free drawing at the end where you'll get a hard-to-find piece of equipment for a Graywater system. So we have a lot of fun to cover today. So without further ado, who can tell me what is Graywater? Just where does it come from, or what is it? Yes?
Potable water that was used either for washing or for bathing or some other human use.
And she said potable water that had been, that's been reused, whether from bathing or some other use. And that is correct. So most common types of Graywater are from your clothes washers, which is what a laundry landscape system is, but also your bathroom sinks and showers. Who caught warm-up water in their shower during their drought? So that is technically the most cost-effective Graywater system out there. It's a little hard on your back, but it is a type of Graywater system. But it's distinct from black water. Black water is what gets flushed down your toilet. Also, if you wash diapers or soiled clothing, that creates black water instead of gray water. And in California, kitchen sink or dishwasher is considered black water as well. Other states in the West have an additional category of dark gray water that they roll kitchen sink and dishwasher water into that has additional regulatory protections or requirements, excuse me. But in California, we just have a singular gray water category, which again is bathroom sinks, showers, and clothes washers, and bathtubs, of course. Rainwater and stormwater are very different. I won't be talking about that today, but both of those strategies are really important to consider to have a sustainable, low-impact landscape and home. And if you want to learn more, southbaygreen.gardens.org has really fantastic resources on rainwater and stormwater capture. But today, we're jamming about 40 hours of content into a 2-hour course. So we have a lot of Graywater to talk about today. So ways to use Graywater: you can use it outdoors, and you can also use it indoors for toilet flushing. If you use it indoors, there's a variety, if you use it outdoors, there's a variety of options. You can send Graywater directly to mulch basins, which help percolate that gray water into the soil for your landscape's benefits, but there's actually no added pumps or filters. A common theme you'll pick up throughout today is that it's best to start simply with gray water, assess your project goals and needs and your property limitations, start at the simplest type of system and move to greater complexity, because as the system gets more complex, it will cost more and there'll be more regulatory and maintenance requirements going forward. There's also pumped and filtered to drip irrigation. That, for example, has tanks, pumps, disinfectant, automatic backflushing, cross-connection protection, most typically, which is like if you see those pipes and, that are kind of upside down U-shaped sticking out of landscapes, that's a type of cross-connection protection. So even in this intro slide, as you move with complexity, there's a greater number of considerations you need to make. Toilet Toilet flushing also has requirements. You can't just send gray water to your toilet. Toilets were designed to flush potable water for better or worse, and any gray water sent to a toilet needs to be disinfected, filtered, and have pumps and also cross-connection protection so that you eliminate risk or very minimize the risk of making any cross-connection between that gray water and our potable water supply, which is extremely important. A common thread to any type of gray water system is protection of health and safety of your own home and also the community. And so that's another reason why it's always best to start with a more simple system and moving down into a more complex depending on your needs and project goals. Does anyone have any questions before I start drilling into gray water? Great. So there's a series of common best practices. Keep it on site. No runoff, pooling, or ponding. You want to keep gray water out of sight, so no spray irrigation. You keep gray water in the soil. You do not store it for more than 24 hours. So that's a key distinction where it's different from rainwater systems. So rain barrels and rain cisterns, you certainly can and are encouraged to store rainwater over a period of time depending on its desired use. But with gray water, you have to, if you have a surge tank, you got to use it or flush it within 24 hours. And we want to protect our aquatic habitat, so keep it away from streams, creeks, and waterbeds. Again, keep it on site and out of sight. It's important to design the system to prevent any clogging, and we'll go into greater detail about how you can design a system that helps protect against the risk of clogging, which also helps with maintenance over time. And every gray water system should have a diverter valve. So a diverter valve is like in this diorama up here, where you can control when you send the gray water to the sewer as it does currently, or to the landscape, or for the other purpose. In Santa Clara County, we also require that the depth to groundwater has to be at least 5 feet below the top of the soil, because we want to make sure that we protect the water quality of the aquifer beneath our feet. That is a key water supply for Santa Clara County, and so even if you do everything right by design, we still have to make sure that we keep it on site, and that includes underneath our feet. So we have a rule where the groundwater has to be at least 5 feet below the ground. And don't worry, that does not mean that I'm going to make you dig a 5-foot hole in your yard. My team has data that we can check to see whether that's a risk or not. And also, think about the types of soaps and detergents that you're using. Just off of the top of your head, who can say a type of soap you should not use in a gray water system? I'm sorry, what?
That's phosphate.
Phosphate? Yes, phosphate. You want to minimize certain types of nutrients. Bleach is another common answer. Gray water is keeping water on your property and also helping maintain the water holding capacity of the soil itself. Soil is a three-dimensional ecosystem, so you want to make sure you protect those microorganisms and also the landscape itself. So avoid salts and boron. So boron is actually a really important micronutrient for plants and landscapes. However, the amount of boron in most laundry detergents, it's a really effective cleaner, but it's too much for landscapes. So a key thing that you can do is look for garden-friendly soaps. And a quick example to help you figure out what type of soap is best. Do you think this powdered soap or this liquid soap is more appropriate for a gray water system? I see some people pointing to the liquid soap. That is correct. Why do you think the liquid soap might generally be better for a gray water system than a powdered soap?
It's already cool. It's already broken, digested, broken down.
Correct. Someone said because it's already broken down, it also is more likely to have a water base to it, whereas a powdered soap is more likely to have some type of salt or other chemical base to it. So that the liquid detergents typically have less impact on the pH of the soil, which has a direct impact on a landscape's ability to uptake nutrients over time. And you want to avoid detergents with antibacterial compounds in them. There is a wide diversity of microorganisms in soil, and it's really important that they live and thrive so that they can process that gray water so that your landscape can benefit. A healthy soil is important for a healthy landscape, and by avoiding antibacterial compounds in those detergents that you use in your gray water system is really important. Also, whiteners and softeners should be avoided too. If you have who has a water softener here? I see only a couple hands, so if you have a water softener, there's a couple of things you can think about. As some of you may know, a water softener most typically may have a sodium-based medium to it, but there are also types of water softeners that have a potassium-based medium. Potassium has its own limitations, but it's less impactful on landscape itself. Most plants are less susceptible to potassium than they are to sodium, and so switching to a potassium-based water softener is an option, or you can even bypass your laundry machine from softened water to eliminate that option as well. Graywateraction.org, Graywater with an E, and also the Environmental Protection Agency has a program called Safer Choice. You can search either of these websites for specific soaps that have less environmental impacts and are more likely to be garden friendly than what you may find at the store, because unlike food, if you look at the back of a detergent bottle, it may not tell you all of its ingredients in it. So these are two great resources to help you on your journey. Earlier in the presentation, I'd already mentioned mulch basins a couple of times. A mulch basin is really just a trench that you dig around a plant's drip line. Who knows what a drip line is? What is it?
The distance out from where the canopy is.
Perfect. She said the distance out from the canopy. So when I awkwardly stand like this as if I'm a tree, if my arm is the canopy, the drip line is the farthest out. So in that beautiful oak tree outside, the drip line is the farthest out that water would fall from the line. And why do you think that the drip line is a good place to excavate a mulch basin? So you don't impact the roots, but also so that you're not too far away from the plant where its roots can still interact and benefit from that gray water. So once you dig that trench, you deposit coarse mulch or coarse wood chips into the mulch basin, hence the name mulch basin. That's where the gray water gets applied directly. Over time, that mulch basin will break down, the mulch in the mulch basin will break down, and all you have to do is dig it out and replace it with fresh mulch. But you may think, how may I use this type of system for a lawn? You don't. Not really. There's other types of gray water systems where that's an option, and Christina will talk about that later. However, like I said, it's best to start simply. If you have trees or even fruit trees that you want to benefit from gray water, or shrubs and vines or other large plants, these are all really fantastic options for simpler systems that have mulch basins that are almost like a filter. It's not exactly like a filter, it's more complex than that, but also simpler. You don't have to go out and buy a mulch basin. You just do a little bit of manual labor, do a little bit of digging, and put in some wood chips. I'd skipped over an important part earlier about the safety of how you use gray water. So some of you may wonder, what about fruit trees? So A fruit tree is distinct from something like a root crop or another vegetable or fruit that's growing in direct contact with the soil. It's very important not to consume anything that's come in direct contact with the gray water. So if you have like a raised vegetable bed, for example, and you want to grow some beets or carrots, don't use gray water for that. But if you have a lemon tree or other type of fruit tree, you certainly can use gray water to benefit that larger tree where the fruit never comes in contact with the soil or never comes in direct contact with the gray water itself. Again, gray water we want to keep out of sight, we want to keep it in the soil, and that it connects to the food that we grow as well. Here's a couple other photos of a mulch basin. So once you excavate the mulch basin around the drip line of the tree, there's a mulch shield. So a mulch shield can be a variety of materials. I have a couple of examples up here where I actually use a valve box. So you can repurpose valve boxes, or you can even repurpose plant boxes like here. And you would just drill a 1-inch hole in the side to basically house the piping. And then it has the extra benefit of letting you know where your gray water is going into the soil, because you have these little lids that you can easily find over time. The shield also prevents roots from going into the outlets themselves. You all have a little schematic or illustration in front of you today, and this drawing of a side view of a mulch basin is in that schematic. It just shows you what it looks like from the side, where the gray water is free falling onto a cushion of mulch. The mulch basin can be anywhere from 8 to 12 feet, just as a general ballpark information. Here you can see the roots are peripheral to the mulch basin, so over time the gray water will percolate down through the air spaces in that coarse mulch, interact with the three-dimensional soil and all of its really lovely microorganisms that are trying to make nutrients more accessible to the plants in your landscape, and the water will become accessible to the plant's roots. If you need to find wood mulch, or if you need to find wood chips, search online for the Santa Clara County's Recycling and Waste Reduction Division. They have resources and lists to help you find providers of wood chips. Some landscape companies will give it to you for free if you find them at the right time, and that county resource is another great resource to check, so you don't have to necessarily go to a store and buy a bunch of wood chips. What is Laundry Day Landscape? Well, it was actually first introduced in 2008, but it's a really simple system. It's a very sustainable and cost-effective system, and it has low maintenance that I'll talk about in the second half of the workshop. It's relatively flexible in how you lay out the system, and most importantly, there are no pumps, no filters, and actually no permits. So you do not need a permit for a laundry landscape system. So if you're a Santa Clara County resident and you have trees and shrubs and your clothes washer is in a space, you'll find out some important details to evaluate this, that it can easily send water to your landscape, then start with that. And then if you apply for the rebate before you actually install the system, the rebate will cover the material cost. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer or you have a small team of friends that want to install such a system, you can do it without a permit. There is a key caveat though that is still very important to check with your local building or planning department about any additional requirements that they may have. Sometimes it might be why are you calling me, or please register just so we know it exists, or they might have some larger distance offsets than I have in my rebate program. But it is very important to check with them for any additional considerations, and like I mentioned, it's the only system we rebate for. Don't worry, we'll talk more about it later today, but in this side view, this is a clothes washer here. It goes up to a diverter valve, a little anti-siphon or auto vent, and it goes into the mulch basin where that gray water infiltrates into the soil. The plant's roots can benefit it and protect itself. So this is particularly useful not only during a drought, but during the summertime. So whether we have a lot of rain one winter or we go through the next drought, you're always going to be doing laundry, and a laundry landscape system is a great option to do it. This photo down here is from a project that both Christina and I actually worked on a couple years back. It may be hard to pick out, but you can actually see where the mulch basins were excavated around these new young trees, and their little mulch shields, and then the finished product. The clothes washer actually wasn't even in the garage. It was in a laundry room just past the garage, so it does not need to be just outside the wall for this system to work for you. And I'll talk more about this little diorama later today. And here's just another drawing of how to visualize how this may work in your own landscape. And laundry landscape is a mouthful, but it is just a clothes washer system. It's a clothes washer system without any extra pumps, no filters, and it's powered by the clothes washer's pump itself and gravity. So how you design your system, you're using effective design, equipment you already have to produce a parallel irrigation system. This does not tie into a conventional irrigation system, it's parallel to it. And most importantly, it does not have it doesn't alter existing plumbing. And before I transition, I have a question about why laundry to landscape. I already mentioned it's sustainable because it's powered by equipment you already have. And the material cost is around $200, and that is what my rebate is for most of the county. We have a few cost-sharing partners throughout Santa Clara County that increase the rebate to make it even easier. It is tricky to find some of the parts and equipment still and find expertise to help you install it effectively. And we hope that our rebate and information from workshops like this can help encourage you and your friends and neighbors to adopt such a system. And it's also very easy maintenance. So when you do annual maintenance, I alluded to this earlier, where you really just check the mulch basins, maybe dig out the old wood chips, put in fresh wood chips, and at all the distribution points where gray water is entering your landscape, you check that for any clogging and a few other details. But will it work for you? Well, it really boils down to 3 types of questions. How accessible is it? What's the topography like on your landscape? And what is your landscape like itself? And if you can answer yes to all the questions we're going to go over briefly, then it will work for you. So, most importantly, is the clothes washer near an external wall or a crawl space? If you have an application in front of you and you're starting to get a little excited and this system might work for you, this is what the application looks like. Sorry for shouting in the microphone. There's a series of questions about halfway through, and the questions are basically what I'm going over right now. Is the landscape within about 50 feet of your clothes washer? If the landscape is at the same elevation or downhill from the clothes washer, you can go a little bit farther than that. And then you also want to make sure that the distance between the mulch basin and your property line is at least 1.5 feet, or at least 2 feet from your foundation, because again, you want to keep it on site. You want to protect your home. You don't want to have a source of water interacting with your home's foundation every time you do laundry. For the landscape, are you doing any other landscape upgrades? For example, the Santa Clara Valley Water District has an amazing turf conversion program where we'll pay you to replace any lawn and turf with low water using plants, or we'll also help you upgrade your irrigation system with other types of measures. And so if you're doing other types of landscape work, this is a great opportunity to also consider a laundry to landscape system. As you saw, there is a little bit of excavating, so if you're doing the work, you might as well think about whether this works for you. Do you have specific plants you want to prioritize? The amount of gray water you produce may not be what your plants need. It might be less than that, it might be more than that. If there's a household of 2 and they do 2 loads of laundry a week, but they have an older top-loading clothes washer that might use between 35 and 50 gallons of water per load, versus a exact same family, like a very comparable family that has the same laundry practices, but they have a efficient front-loading Energy Star clothes washer that might produce only 12 to 25 gallons. So think about your clothes washer, what your laundry patterns are, and how you might want to prioritize that gray water through the landscape so you can simplify the system as much as possible. And again, this is not a type of system if your landscape is uphill from your gray water source, because you would stress out the clothes washer's pump. The clothes washer is designed to wash clothes, not power an irrigation system, but gravity and momentum help it work well for this type of system if it's at the same elevation or downhill.